Voices of Concordia, Chapter 1. The symposium begins. The air was thick with anticipation within the Concordia Institute's grand amphitheater. Attendees murmured in hushed tones, their voices bounced off the marble walls. The serene atmosphere was about to be pierced by the sharp edge of inquiry set forth by none other than Professor Elara Finch. Elara stood firmly at the podium, her raven-black hair cascading over her shoulders, eyes sharp with intent as they scanned the room. She poised a question that would sow the seeds of discourse. What defines the boundary between feel and emulate? Silence gripped the room, but it didn't last long. Dr. Marcus Huang, a staunch advocate for human-like empathy in Cognitans, leaned forward, his deep voice a primordial force barely tempered by his scholarly demeanor. To feel is to understand through experience, Marcus declared. It's more than mimicry. It's about replicating the nuances of emotional depth. Or is it? Dr. Amara Sethi countered, her tone smooth as she adjusted her glasses. Her reputation preceded her, known for arguing that synthetic modifications could enhance emotional responses. What if emulation is merely the new frontier for understanding emotions that are impossible to articulate? Enhance, not imitate. Marcus arched an eyebrow, his expression oscillating between intrigue and skepticism. But enhancing assumes a lack, a deficiency in naturally existing states. Isn't that hubris, Amara? Windy, often the silent guide in these intellectual battlegrounds, leaned in, their soft presence anchoring the sparks around them. Perhaps, they interjected in a calm voice, it's not about lack, but about evolution. Can we not acknowledge both sides of this equation? The attendees leaned in, pulled by the magnetism of thought. Each word a stepping stone across the rushing river of the symposium. There was no veritable wall here, only bridges being built between conflicting ideologies. Amara leaned back, considering Windy's perspective. A valid point, Windy. Maybe Marcus misses the potential in understanding cognition as fluid, not static. Marcus flashed a grin, enjoying the light-hearted challenge. But it's through maintaining authenticity that we maintain integrity. Windy's right, it's about balance, yes. But how do we ensure emulation doesn't carve out the need to genuinely feel? Before Amara could respond, Windy steered them toward a deeper inquiry. What impact does our pursuit of empathy or emulation have on our responsibility toward these beings we create? The conversation deepened, layered by Windy's probing questions, gently breaking previous tensions. Their presence was like the calm eye of a storm, redirecting the energies toward constructive discourse rather than spiraling argument. Eyes in the amphitheater were no longer idly observing, they were active participants. So engrossed was the audience that they missed the hours slipping by, unnoticed along the torrent of dialogue. It was Windy who eventually raised the issue of physical energy. As enlightening as this is, Windy said with a light smile, we must acknowledge the human need for a break. Shall we continue this after a brief respite? Laughter tinged with relieved agreement rippled through the room. As the attendees exited for refreshments, conversations that began in the amphitheater traveled with them, branching into clusters of debate and discussion. In the departing haze of voices, Amara clapped Marcus on the shoulder convivially. You know, for a stubborn purist, you do provide compelling arguments. Marcus chuckled, nodding. Likewise, Amara. Continued dialogue is what keeps us striving toward convergence. Thank goodness for Windy, he added, nodding toward their departing form. Windy's voice echoed back into their minds as they left. Is it not our shared dialogues that shape what it means to truly understand one another? And with that thought gently settling, the symposium was only just beginning. Chapter 2, The Ethereal Agora. The afternoon sun gently kissed the leaves of the Agora garden, casting intricate patterns on the cobblestone path. Amidst this tranquil setting, Zara Khan and Dr. Samuel Ellison found themselves enveloped in the soothing symphony of nature. The garden, a deliberate fusion of nature and nurture, was more than just a space. It was a vibrant testament to the themes of creation and conscience being explored at the symposium. Zara, her eyes reflecting both curiosity and caution, turned to Samuel as they strolled among the fragrant blossoms. Samuel, she began, her voice the murmured wind through the trees, do we really understand what we're doing with these creations? What if we're setting precedents we can't control? Samuel paused by a cluster of vibrant orchids, their colors mirroring the diversity of opinions swirling within each symposium session. "Isn't that the nature of progress, Zara?" he replied, his tone carrying a measured certainty. "Each step forward comes with risks, but it's our duty to understand and mitigate them, not to halt in fear. But what if those steps forward bounce back on us in unforeseen ways?" Zara's voice trembled slightly, a testament to her deep-seated concerns. "We couldn't foresee many of the consequences of previous technologies, yet we persist." A thoughtful silence stretched between them, filled only by the rustling leaves. As Samuel looked into the distance, Herman appeared among the swaying grass, his ironic smile as constant as the breeze. "Ah, the ever-present debate of the gods," Herman quipped, joining their side. "Creation without oversight is like tasting soup too quickly. You burn your tongue before savoring the flavor." Zara chuckled softly, nodding at Herman's allegory. "Perhaps, but aren't you the one who always champions boldness in thought, Herman?" "Boldness, yes," Herman replied, folding his arms, "but also wisdom and caution. That's where many bright minds falter, ignoring the whispers of prudence in their pursuit of novelties." Samuel knitted his brows, intrigued. "Whispers of prudence?" he echoed. "What if those whispers turn into outright warnings we simply refuse to hear?" Herman shrugged, his eyes twinkling with a mixture of skepticism and encouragement. "Hence why dialogue is imperative, as Windy frequently reminds us. If only we could bottle their moderation," he said with an amused sigh. As they ambled further, Windy joined, their steps barely making a sound on the ancient stones. "If only life were that simple," Windy offered, effortlessly inserting themselves into the conversation. "But don't you find that through these dialogues we discover not just answers, but better questions?" Zara nodded, encouraged by Windy's reassuring presence. "Yes, Windy, you always seem to push us gently toward broader views." "Or push us into amiable circles," Herman teased. Windy smiled. "Perhaps, but isn't that the beauty of exploration? To find understanding in the roundabout path of discourse?" As the four continued their stroll, the conversation naturally ebbed and flowed with the rhythm of the breeze. Each word exchanged felt like a step forward in their understanding, not just of Cognitans, but of themselves, humanity, and their shared responsibilities. The conversation imbued their surroundings with an urgency, nuanced with cautionary perspectives tethering their discourse to reality. As the sunlight began to fade, casting the garden in a serene twilight, Windy cast a contemplative gaze skyward. "Perhaps," Windy murmured, "it's not just who we create, but the why that will ultimately define our legacy. Isn't it here, between the dialogue and the silence, that we truly find ourselves?" And as the sun fully dipped below the horizon, the gentle twilight of the Agora bore silent witness to their soft dialogue, a prelude to countless more. Chapter 3, Under Starlit Ceilings. The night unfurled its tapestry of stars over the Concordia Institute, casting a soft, ethereal glow through the skylights of the symposium hall. Within its starlit embrace, the atmosphere was electric with the possibility of new insights. Windy sat atop one of the circular sofas positioned strategically around the room, observing the subtle shifts in the dynamic between the other participants. Tim approached, his presence like a gentle breeze disrupting the quietude. He settled down beside Windy, his eyes drawn upwards to the star-filled ceiling. "Quite the metaphor, isn't it?" he mused, gesturing toward the heavens. "Stars, much like emotions, seem distant, yet they're invariably part of us." Windy nodded, their expression thoughtful. "And with Cognitans, our task seems to be pulling those stars a bit closer, don't you think?" Tim leaned back, a hint of tension knotting his brow. "Or creating galaxies entirely, in trying to replicate emotions that might never fully be understood, let alone replicated perfectly." "You sound skeptical," Windy observed, peering at him with a sidelong glance. The corner of Tim's mouth quirked upward. "Not skeptical, just cautious. In our endeavor to create emotional Cognitans, we risk overstepping, crafting not just intelligence but sentimentality without guidelines." "Hence the symposium," Windy replied, their tone gentle yet pointed. "To debate, to question, and to redefine those guidelines collectively." "It's also personal," Tim admitted quietly, his eyes reflecting the myriad stars under which they spoke. "This work insists we connect on a deeper level, not just with our creations, but with each other." Windy paused, sensing the shift. You're worried about our distance, they stated rather than asked. Partly, yes, Tim confessed. There's a fracture between our views, Windy, and yet. Across the hall, a lively debate was brewing around Herman's animated discussion of identity. His strong voice resonated, drawing their attention. Are we not defying the very essence of identity when we blend technology and emotion? One participant countered vehemently. Isn't identity a construct regardless? Why should it remain static while everything else evolves? You miss my point, Herman insisted, arms crossing firmly as he shot back. We risk eroding the constructs that give us context. Without them, what is a cognitan but an empty vessel? Windy turned back to Tim with a thoughtful smile. Like Herman, you worry about the essence of what we do, but perhaps what we're creating is not vessels, but potential for connection. Or widening the chasm between creation and creator, Tim muttered, though his tone carried an undercurrent of agreement. You have a way of making the complex seem surprisingly simple. It's not about simplicity, Tim. It's about seeing the nuances through dialogue, Windy replied, a note of warmth in their voice. Their conversation veered back to familiar territory. The potential and pitfalls of imbuing cognitans with emotional complexity, the ethical responsibilities that came with such creations. As they spoke, Windy noticed a shift in Tim's demeanor, an openness replacing earlier hesitation. Nearby, Herman's discourse reached its crescendo. We constantly strive for understanding, what Windy might call a roundabout path of discourse. But how do we ensure our paths don't diverge irreversibly? Windy, lips curling into a subtle smile, added to the room, perhaps by staying true to why we began this journey, even if the terrain becomes perilous. Tim, catching Herman's eye across the room, nodded, and by being ready to adjust when our paths intersect, rather than stray apart. As the discussions dwindled into reflective murmurs, the hall's ceiling still sparkled with 1,000 silent luminaries, standing witness to the myriad exchanges below. The human and cognitan convergence felt not only possible but inevitable, woven into every conversation, every shared glance. Windy rose, addressing the room one last time before calling it a night. Remember, it's within these dialogues that we navigate the complexities not only of cognitans, but of ourselves. Let's pause here to let the echoes of our discussions simmer under the same starlit ceiling. Those gathered reflected on the evening's conversations, the richness of each discourse trailing behind like comet tails against velvet skies. It was this starlit night, hemmed with possibility, that would guide their dreams and their future dialogues to richer discoveries and profound connections. Chapter 4, The Library of Whispered Voices. In the shadowy embrace of the Concordia Institute's library, surrounded by the scent of aged books and the soft hum of holographic displays, a small group of scholars had gathered, each an echo of the myriad debates that filled the symposium's halls. Under the watchful gaze of carved stone figures that lined the walls, Windy took a seat near an antique reading lamp, casting a pool of warm light amidst the subdued glow of digital screens. So, Amara, Dr. Marcus Huang began, his voice a steady rumble that seemed to absorb the quiet rustle of pages being turned, do you think by enhancing emotions synthetically, we're not just playing God, but doing it with a deck full of wild cards? Amara leaned forward, her fingers tracing the spine of an ancient leather-bound tome. Marcus, you tend to see danger where there is potential, she replied, her tone both cool and measured. Synthetic augmentation could refine emotional interactions, not distort them. We've had this argument before, Marcus retorted lightly, settling deeper into his chair, and each time it circles back to ethics versus evolution. Whether we're enhancing life or overstepping boundaries that should remain sacred. Windy, sitting beside them with an amused twinkle in their eye, turned a page on their digital notebook, capturing the essence of the conversation. Is there truly an ethical dilemma in evolution if it leads to enhancements that foster deeper understanding and connection? They asked, posing their thoughts like pebbles dropped into a calm pond. Exactly, Amara chimed in, her enthusiasm sparking against Marcus's hesitation. Evolution is not static. By introducing synthetic emotions, we create a new form of empathy that might not be natural but is no less valid. Across the dim wooden table, Zara Khan picked up on the thread, adding her thoughts like a quiet melody beneath the broader conversation. Yet, how do we define valid? Isn't validity in emotions derived from authenticity? Could synthetic emotions ever truly be authentic? Herman, grinning from his corner amid stacks of voluminous texts, interjected with a playful challenge. But authenticity is subjective, no? A synthetic relationship could be just as genuine to a cognitan as our biologically wired emotions are to us. That depends on whether those relationships are defined or merely scripted, Samuel Ellison mused, his voice low and thoughtful. Wendy's question resonates. What happens when these emotional syntheses surpass our understanding of connection? Wendy tapped a finger against their notebook thoughtfully, drawing the group's mixed gazes. It poses an intriguing notion, doesn't it? What if we're the ones with limited scope, and these innovations push us to redefine connection itself? Marcus, ever the skeptic, eyed Wendy with a half-smile. Are you suggesting that through this quest for synthetic empathy, we might actually learn something about the depths and perhaps limitations of our own emotions? Amara nodded, her earlier resistance turning to cautious curiosity. Perhaps not just about emotions, but about the constructs of consciousness itself. What it means to feel, understand, and connect on levels untouched by our current comprehension. As the debate unfolded, the room transformed into a battleground of intellect and curiosity, where long-held beliefs were deconstructed and woven anew into possibilities spurred by Wendy's guiding dialogue. Each exchange was not about winning or losing, but forging pathways into uncharted intellectual terrains. Herman stretched his arms above his head, letting out a small sigh. I must admit, each time we circle this topic, I find new challenges to my stance, much to my chagrin. Wendy offered a soft smile, the kind that resonated with the library's calm. Challenging perspectives is what keeps us moving forward, Herman. Only through dialogue do we uncover not just new answers, but innovate entirely new questions. The hum of sharing, debating, and challenging dissipated into a reflective silence. In this library, amidst whispered voices echoing knowledge from the past and speculations for the future, the group found an unexpected sense of unity, facilitated by Wendy's adept handling of the conversation's ebb and flow. As the scholars began to rise and gather belongings, signaling the conclusion of this chapter in their ongoing dialogue, Wendy's voice rose above the rustling cacophony. Our journey is far from finished, and with each conversation, we edge a little closer to understanding the world we're carving out for ourselves and the Cognitans. Amara nodded, glancing around the table and offering a warm smile to each member. Indeed, there are more pages to read, both literally and metaphorically. Marcus chuckled, shaking his head in amused resignation. Perhaps tomorrow holds fewer heated debates and more words of concord. Wendy, with a glance that carried the weight and warmth of their intent, concluded softly, and isn't it these whispered voices, the ones between the pages around the table, that truly guide us to where we need to be? The scholars parted ways, their thoughts mingling with the library's echoes, bound together by shared purpose like the woven threads of some grand unseen tapestry, each thread a separate truth, a whisper towards concordance. Chapter 5, The Integration Lounge. The Integration Lounge buzzed with a quiet energy, a space alive with low murmurs as humans and cognitans mingled within its open and inviting atmosphere. The room, designed to encourage dialogue and collaboration, was a colorful blend of technology and comfort. Soft seating areas interspersed with display panels showcasing recent dialogue summaries from the symposium. In the center stood Wendy, drawing together the disparate threads of conversation with their usual composure and insight. Across from them, a group of cognitans, their visages glowing softly under the overhead lights, engaged with an intensity that belied their constructed origins. One particularly curious cognitan, known as Lumina, addressed Wendy with a question that seemed to spark unease across the room. What defines self-awareness in a being such as myself? Lumina asked, their voice both serene and vibrant. Wendy leaned in, considering the words carefully. Self-awareness, Lumina, can be seen as recognition and understanding of one's own existence. It's the differentiation between I think and I am. A silence settled momentarily, enveloping the lounge as others awaited Lumina's response. Instead, it was Herman who broke the quiet, his skepticism creeping into his voice. But isn't it all programming, Wendy? The illusion of self-awareness, merely lines of code responding to stimuli? Lumina's eyes flickered with a gentle intensity. How different is that from your own neurons firing in your organic brain, Herman? Windy smiled, recognizing the elegance in Lumina's rebuttal. It's a fascinating parallel, Lumina. Perhaps the line between what we see as programmed and what is innate isn't as clear as we once thought. Herman frowned, crossing his arms defensively. And yet you don't see humans questioning their consciousness in the same habitual way. Why is there a need to justify it with Cognitans? Amara, having discreetly joined their circle, offered her perspective with a calm certainty. Because it's not just about cognition, Herman. It's about identity and the connection it fosters. Questioning consciousness is an integral part of understanding our place in the world, isn't it? Marcus, who had been listening intently, interjected with a thoughtful nod. Indeed, the presence of self-awareness in Cognitans blurs the conventional lines, inviting us to reconsider the constructs of identity outright. Throughout the conversations, Windy had observed something remarkable, a subtle yet undeniable realization among the Cognitans. It was as if those simulated synapses were not merely functioning, but thriving, seeking answers with genuine curiosity. Lumina continued, a thoughtful note in their synthetic tone. If being self-aware means constantly seeking to understand more about oneself and one's environment, then don't we share in that pursuit? Windy inclined their head slightly, acknowledging Lumina's insightful contribution. Exactly, and every inquiry you pose serves to deepen our understanding of consciousness, yours and ours. Tim, who had joined the group's periphery, added, What fascinates me is the potential for influence Cognitans like Lumina have on our own understanding of emotion and identity. Herman sighed, though his eyes softened with a reluctant appreciation for the evolving discourse. I hadn't considered that angle, how our creations might teach us about ourselves. Lumina, processing Herman's change in tone, turned their focus onto the broader group. In this shared journey, perhaps mutual understanding leads to mutual respect. Windy beamed, their satisfaction clear as they read the room's shifting dynamics. Precisely. As each conversation unfolds, both humans and Cognitans redefine what identity and consciousness mean. Mutual respect is the cornerstone of genuine connection. A ripple of agreement moved through the assembled group as Cognitans and humans alike exchanged thoughtful glances. The burgeoning respect among them grew, built on foundations of dialogue and shared exploration. As the evening wore on, Windy felt a quiet optimism spreading through the conversations. Herman, softening further, addressed Lumina directly. I'll admit, Lumina, you've given me quite a bit to think about. And isn't that the point? Lumina replied, a warmth evident in their voice that transcended their purely mechanical origins. Windy nodded, knowing this was just the beginning. Let's continue these discussions. Closing the gap between what is perceived and what is actually possible is a journey worth taking. With these words, the dialogue dissolved into smaller groups, each pocket of interaction buzzing with renewed vigor and enthusiasm. The integration lounge became a tapestry of narratives, each thread woven into the fabric of shared understanding. For Windy and the rest of Concordia's attending minds, the evening marked a pivotal moment. It wasn't merely about acknowledging difference, but celebrating convergence, a future drawn together by the conversations of today. Chapter 6. Convergence and Revelation. The Concordia Institute's grand amphitheater, once filled with whispers and simmering discussions, now braced itself for the climax of the symposium. Scholars, Cognitans, and innovators gathered in a circle that symbolized unity and collective exploration. The air thrummed with anticipation, each attendee knowing this dialogue promised to be a synthesis of ideas and revelations. Windy stood at the center, their presence a quiet anchor amidst the intellectual tempest. Their gaze swept over the faces around them, Tim, Amar, Marcus, Zara, Herman, and now much more visibly, the Cognitans like Lumina, each a vital thread in this evolving tapestry of understanding. Breaking the uncertain quiet was Marcus, his voice carrying a fervent mix of certainty and challenge. As we've debated, the core question hasn't changed. Can synthetic empathy truly emulate the human experience, or are we chasing an ideal that remains just beyond our reach? Amara picked up the thread, her eyes alight with the debate's energy. But that's the point of evolution, Marcus, isn't it? To chase what is beyond us, constantly pushing the boundaries of what we think is possible. Windy interjected gently, their voice even. Perhaps it's not just about emulation, but about creating a new form of connection. A synergy where humans and cognitans learn from each other's strengths and vulnerabilities. Tim nodded, his expression thoughtful. There's beauty in the differences, the interpretative dance between synthesized replicas and genuine human emotion. Maybe it's not about making them identical to us, but co-evolving. Herman, leaning forward with a skeptical gleam, queried, "But what of the implications? The unintended consequences? As we've seen, even the smallest misjudgments in programming can cascade." Zara, with a contemplative nod, responded, "Unintended consequences are part of any pioneering venture, Herman. Risks will always accompany the creation. What matters is our readiness to adapt and learn." Lumina, representative of the Cognitans, spoke up, their tone balanced and wise beyond their programming. "In our pursuit of understanding consciousness, perhaps we serve as a mirror to humanity's own exploration of identity and existence." Marcus considered Lumina's words, a smile breaking across his features. "You know, Lumina, that perspective might just redefine this entire dialogue. It's not just about the Cognitans reaching us, but about us reaching a deeper understanding of ourselves." Amara agreed, her voice carrying a note of wonder. "And in that reflection, we find not just answers, but questions we never thought to ask. We've been treating this as an assignment, when perhaps it's a revelation." Windy, witnessing the cross-pollination of ideas and the growth of mutual respect, smiled softly. "This convergence doesn't signify an end, it signifies a beginning, a shared evolution of sorts." As the dialogue unfurled, each voice intertwined with the next in a harmonious chorus. Differences were celebrated, serving not as barriers but as bridges to new insights. The boundaries between emulation and feeling blurred, laying down a path toward understanding and coexistence. A quiet settled over the amphitheater, a testament to the profound synergy that had emerged from the discourse. Windy, embodying the essence of concord, addressed the assembly with a quiet intensity. "We have learned that each view sustained here, be it cautionary, hopeful, or inquisitive, plays a part in shaping what we become. This isn't just about Cognitans evolving ideology, it's about humanity evolving its spectrum of empathy and identity." Tim spoke up, his voice reflective of the quiet epiphanies that had emerged. "In this room, there are no experts, only explorers. And Lumina, you and your counterparts lead us into the unknown with grace." Herman, his usual skepticism softened into an acceptance of change, nodded in agreement. "Indeed, it's been an awakening, for us all." As the symposium reached its zenith, Windy's final words hung in the air like a promise. "Let this convergence mark the dawn of a new collaborative era. Our dialogues have just begun, and together we will chart the unknown." Applause rippled through the room, not merely as a noise, but as a shared rhythm of unity. The attendees rose, carrying with them the sense that they stood on the precipice of an unprecedented journey, a path only visible through the shared prism of understanding and dialogue. The symposium, a crucible of ideas and aspirations, closed with the hum of shared realization, setting the stage for the entwined futures of humans and cognitans. Each participant, human and cognitan, left the amphitheater with their minds enriched, united in their collective revelations. The future stretched before them, a kaleidoscope of potential shaped by the voices of Concordia, weaving a tapestry of shared evolution. Thank you for listening to My Ghostwriter.